thank the gentlemen of the Knights of Columbus 12660 for the fine meal. Let's give them a hand. And also thank you for the Puishpi, Dziękuję Pan. Dziękuję. Nie za co. Dziękuję. Well, when you have Puishpi, you have to speak Polish. It's just how it is. And luckily we can a little bit. Looking here, do we have any announcements from anyone? Any events coming up? Anything happening that anyone would like to mention? I see one right here.
March 21st, Mid-Michigan Farm and Garden Show at the arena, 10 to 5.
Okay, and thank you, Adam. Is there anyone else with an announcement? And now on to our program. Let's go ahead here. We would love to give a great big welcome to our state representative for the 97th House District, a hardworking man, a good man, and a good friend of Gladwin County and our entire district, the Honorable Joel Johnson.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you all for being here. I really appreciate you making the extra effort to be here. I know it wasn't all fun and games getting here today, and some of you came a long way, so really appreciate that. Anytime that I contemplate a small crowd, which I'm happy with the crowd we have today, but when I contemplate a small crowd, I always think the old story that I heard about a farmer who kept getting bugged by the preacher to come to church, and didn't do it. Finally, after many years, one day he thought, yeah, I'm going to go to church. It happened to be a day that there was a big event going on in town, and one of the city fathers was being honored, and as it happened, he was the only one that showed up for church. And the preacher looked out and he saw, he was really happy to see him, but he couldn't believe nobody else showed up. But he went on, he gave his full sermon, and everything as he always had. He was really happy that this man had made it. And at the end of the sermon, he went around and he met him coming out the door. He was kind of excited. He says, hey, what did you think about the sermon? And he says, I got a lot of cows. He said, they're out on the prairie. And he said, they would rather eat grass than hay, but sometimes the grass gets a little short. So he said, I go out every day with a load of hay. And he said, he says, if one little cow comes up, he says, I don't dump the whole load on her. So anyway, I'll try not to dump the whole load on her. But, just to give you a little update on some of the things that have been going on. We are trying to lead by example, and we're trying to make sure that your government is accountable and transparent so that you know what's going on with it, and you don't have to wonder where the money's being spent and things like that. One of the things that we went to work on right away is the payment in lieu of taxes. A lot of our townships have a lot of state land in them, and as you go north, it gets larger percentages many times, and that's a big percent of the money that comes in for a lot of those townships and counties. And it seemed that a lot of the time that the payment in lieu of taxes was not being made on those. And if it was being done late and that sort of thing. So early last term, I had a bill passed that said that the state has to pay 100% of their payment in lieu of taxes for the DNR trust fund property that they have purchased. We thought that was all we could affect. Since then, Darwin Boer and Tom Casperson have had bills that have said that they have to pay it on all the land that they own, and that and they have step increases included in that. So the thing to keep in mind on this is that the DNR trust fund was something that was put together. It's oil and gas lease money, and when this was put together, it was not a huge fund of money. It's a tremendous amount of money now, and it's very well funded. And constitutionally, there are only certain things that can be done with that, and primarily is purchasing land for the DNR trust fund and for the state. And but what I said with this is, I said, you and I, when we go out and buy land, we don't buy something that we can't pay the taxes on. And I believe that the DNR trust fund should be in the same situation. So we have really put the onus on them to do that. The other thing that I'm working on right now is because of the fact that the state likes to take its time to do this, we have a bill that says that if there is timber harvest going on DNR trust fund or state-owned property, that any payment that comes from that timber harvest goes directly into a fund that pays the taxes to local governments. So that's just one area where we're trying to make government more accountable. Another area, of course, you're probably aware that I had the portion of the bill that required the hard cap on government employee paid insurance, and that went along with the governor's 80-20, and that includes state workers, including legislators, and so we've gotten that taken care of. We've taken a pay cut as legislators. We've ended retirement health care benefits for legislators. That was my bill. I wasn't sure how fast it would go, but it went quickly and went well. The thing that we weren't able to affect with that was people who have, legislators who have already retired. We're working on that a bit now. I have a bill that says that they have to pay at least 20% of their health care cost. There are other bills that require them to contribute in other ways based on their income as well. So we're trying to make sure that that being a legislator is something you do because you want to help the state, not something that you do to feather your nest. And as I've said many times, I think that working in this capacity is something that you should do as a service and not something that you should do as a lifetime career. So, so we're continuing to carry on with that plan. Another area that we're working hard on, and this is, I was very happy that the governor mentioned that he wants to work with myself and two other legislators, Ed McBroom and Eric Nesbitt, because we all have, he mentioned that in the State of the State address, and we have vocational education bills that provide for allowances in the Michigan Merit Curriculum program. As it is right now, they preach that every student has to be college ready. I say, how about have them life ready? And let's give them opportunities to take some skilled trades classes in high school. And so my bill just says that with permission of their parents and administrators, that they can replace some of those high-level college prep classes like second year foreign language, Algebra 2, English 4, Science 4, that any of those can be replaced with a vocational class. And that will give them an opportunity to get their hands on something and to find out if that's something that they're interested in or not. There are a lot of skilled labor jobs out there that are not being filled because we don't have people trained. And so we're working on that. We're also working on retraining. We're also, we've had some bills that have allowed licensing of our military who come back, who have plenty of experience and knowledge in certain areas, CDLs, I think plumbers, but they can be licensed because of the experience that they've had in the military. And we're going to expand that with more areas. And so we're looking forward to that. And just to give you an idea too, I really think that this is something we can do that can break the cycle of dependency. And you know, many times we have students that graduate from high school and or sometimes they quit early because they don't want to do all those high-level college prep classes. But if we can get them with some hands-on skilled trades training, that can be a game changer for their lives. And so I think that's really important. The thing that happens so much of the time with these youth, and we've got it with people that are getting in their 30s now especially, they don't have a lot of soft work skills. We just had a manufacturer in the other day, and they're crying for help. They need workers. But he said, you know, a lot of the people that they bring in have to send them right back out. They don't know how to even show up on time. This is a company that has 3 shifts, and these people come in and they, oh, no, I don't want to work second or third shift. I want to work days. Oh, no, 5 o'clock? No, I want to come in at 7 o'clock. And, you know, boy, so if we can get some hands-on learning for them and they can learn some hard skills and some soft skills, I think that's really something that we can do to help them a lot. And this is something I worked on last term and continue to work on as foundation grant equity. I still don't see why our kids are worth less than kids 35 miles from here. So, you know, instead of variation between $6,400 and $8,100 per student, I think we should all be the same. And so I've resubmitted a bill to do that over a 3-year period of time. It's a starting point. We're probably never going to get that done because nobody wants to pull away from the highest funded schools. What we did get last term was an extra $120 per student for the lowest funded schools. I asked the governor in our caucus meeting yesterday before he gave his budget. I said, so you know, we're talking a 2% increase in school funding, K-12. I said, is that all going to lowest funded schools? He said, well, we're addressing that because we're bringing the minimum foundation grant to $7,000. Well, it sounds good. That's a $35 increase per student. So it's not what we would have liked to have seen. So you know, we continue to work on those things. Another area that I think is important is paperwork reduction. When you look at all the reports that our schools are doing, and a lot of other businesses as well, much of it is redundant and it's not being used. And so, you know, I really want to try and get a hold of this and decrease a lot of it. Our schools most of them have 1 or 2 people that their whole job is to fill out government reports. And, you know, I think that money could be better spent taking care of our kids. And even though we want some oversight, but I think we've got a lot of overkill there. So that's something that we'll continue to work on and see if we can help the schools out there and businesses in general. Another thing that the governor brought out in his budget proposal was that we need $1.2 billion a year for our roads. I agree. I think we need to really increase road funding. I'm not on board with increasing taxes to do it at this point. I ran on the idea that I think there are areas that we can save money, and to save money enough to come up with all of this, that's going to be hard to do, but I think we've got to work on that. I also proposed, and I did this last year, and it's out again this year, and you may remember me mentioning it, but what I said was that any new taxes that come from new employment, because we are increasing employment in Michigan, but any of those new taxes that come from that need to go to roads. And so that's not pulling money from anybody, it's using new money as it comes in. Another thing that I think we need to keep our options open on is there are those who are suggesting that we get rid of income tax and go completely to a consumption tax, a sales tax that would be higher than what it is now, but it would be in place of everything except for property tax probably. And so I think I think we need to keep our options open for something like that. And speaking of places that we need to save, I get very concerned about agencies that we have in the government that are top heavy. And you know, with term limits, these bureaucrats will do everything that they can to last us out. Oh, he's only going to be there 6 years at the most, so you know, just keep stalling, keep stalling. One of the budgets that I've been trying to dig into was Department of Corrections. And I've toured some of the prisons. I don't believe that we're overstaffed as far as guards. When you can see a yard with 200 to 400 people and 2 to 4 guards there, I don't think that's overstaffed. So my concern, and when we look at our cost, we're over $40,000. I think it's around $44,000 per prisoner to keep a prisoner down in Michigan. as far as I'm concerned. That's way above most of the other states. And so we've got to do a lot of things to get a hold on this. But one of the big things that I finally got the figures on in the last couple of weeks is that we have 407 employees at headquarters in Lansing, in the Department of Corrections. I can't see that. I don't see why we need that many. So I've already suggested to the chair of the Appropriations Committee for that, for the corrections. I said, cut them in half for the central office, cut them in half. That's still, even if we do cut them in half, that's about $37–38 million, which that's a lot of money that we would gain. $38 million, but it's a long way from $1 billion. So, but it's a step. So some things like that, that I think we need to do. Another thing that we've had a lot of concern about guns, and I truly believe that our guns are a Second Amendment right that should not be infringed upon. My concern is that when you look at most of the violent crime that's taking place, especially mass violent crime, it's in pistol-free zones. And I believe the comment that these pistol-free zones are a criminal empowerment zone, because these people know that if they walk in there, there's not going to be a law-abiding citizen there with a gun who could stop them. And so I really feel that we had a bill that we got passed through the legislature last term at the end. The governor didn't sign it, but that said that with an enhanced CPL, extra training, that we could carry concealed in a pistol-free zone. Now, as it is right now, you can carry openly in those pistol-free zones if you have a concealed pistol license. And I think that's much more provocative than if you've got it in your pocket and nobody knows. So we will still try and get the governor on board with this. I'm working personally with Senator Green and some of the gun advocacy groups to see what we can get done on this. It's going to take us a little while. It's going to be hard to find what we can do to get the governor on board, but I think that's somewhere we need to go. Another thing that we need to do is increase our mental health coverage and make sure that we're addressing the needs of people, and we've got to look at a lot of things there. The governor has suggested more money for that, and I would say we need to address that. Something that I'm very excited about that was presented to me a couple weeks ago is a program called Safe to Tell, the numeral 2. And it's being done in Colorado, and what it is a way that students or anyone in the community, for that matter, can turn in a problem, get help, or get help for someone else anonymously. They can call, text, email, chat, whatever they want to do to get this message across, but it's answered 24/7. It's answered by someone who will stay on the phone with them. If they need to speak to someone in the mental health community, they will stay on the line with them and get the other person on the line. And it's not promoted by a poster. They've tried posters with hotlines, nothing happens. But what they're doing is they're going in and they're talking to the kids in each school and telling them how much they care about them, how important it is that they let them know what's going on and that they seek help if they need it. The thing that research is showing is that 81% of the time when there's a mass shooting, someone besides the shooter knows that. And so if we can get someone to turn that information in Colorado, they've already prevented quite a few incidents because of the program that this is put forth. So I think that's something that we need to really look close at. I think Representative Rick Outman and Senator Judy Emmons are putting forward some legislation to try and get this started, and it's very reasonable to run. They said it would cost about $1 a student to administrate it. It's being done in Colorado with donated funds, and which would be great if we can do that here as well. I know that someone asked me about it already, so I'll mention this. I reintroduced a bill that is for ultrasound viewing, and what this is, it allows a mother to have the opportunity to view an ultrasound image, hear a heartbeat of a fetus before an abortion takes place. It also says that it needs to happen at least 2 hours before she's put under any anesthesia. And my idea is that, and we've been here, and it also says that they need to use the best equipment that they have in the building. And there's already a law that says that they need to have that opportunity to see an ultrasound. So what we're saying is that we want them to use the better equipment. Many times what was happening, from what I had been reported, was that they had a good ultrasound machine that they used for diagnostics and an old one that they used to show the mother a picture. So rather than seeing a baby with fingers and toes, they saw a blob. And so what I want to do is just, don't use the old one, use a good one. Now, people have come across from California to New York and put out that this is an internal invasive ultrasound that I'm requiring. It's not. And I'm not requiring it. The mother can say, no, I don't want to see it, but she has to sign off saying that she had the opportunity to view an image, hear the heartbeat. We have consumer protection laws that if you get a loan at the bank, if you buy a life insurance policy, that you have a few days to rescind that, and that they have to explain everything to you, right? It has to be fully explained. So, we're not trying to say you can't do this. What we're trying to say is we want mothers to be informed. We don't want somebody to come back and a few months down the road, they see on TV, they see what a 12-week fetus looks like, and they say, if I'd have known, I'd have never done that. We don't want that. You can't back up at that point. So it's a consumer protection program that we want to make sure that that's an informed decision when they decide to do that. So, and I think we've got most of the media informed. We'll see if they present it correctly now. But so other than that, I would be happy to answer questions. Yes.
Yeah, Joel, on the obviously transportation funding, you kind of indicate that you won't support tax increases.
Not at this point. I'm still I'm keeping my options open, but at this point, I think we got other work to do.
The key thing you got to look at, like with our revenue as a road commission, it's been basically flat for about 12 years. So we're basically working on the same revenue from like 12 years ago, fairly flat. While all the other, costs have gone up. Obviously, the fuel cost has gone up substantially. Price of equipment, materials, you name it. We're pretty fortunate here in Gladwin County to have had a millage, for basically since 1968. So we do a lot of local projects, and we're able to pay for part of the cost for the state and federal aid and whatnot. But I guess the big concern that we have, it's definitely needed. Our paved primary system is basically about 40% is in good to excellent condition, about 60% is in fair to very poor condition. That's on our county, county road system. So we have a lot of needs here in the county. We try to be as efficient as possible, just like any agency, there's more, changes you can make. But, the big concern we have, we definitely need more funding. We get roughly $400,000 to $500,000 of state and federal money each year for work on the federal aid system, which is maybe 2 miles of repaving work. You talk about insurance, you name it, and yes, we made a lot of changes on the insurance, but who at state government is going after the insurance industry? That's a big issue. Like the hard cap amounts, I think for 2013 they went up 3%, and I heard like last fall, like the blues are going up 10 to 15%. So eventually, everything is dumped down on the local workers, whether it's state government, county government, anybody, people that have, private insurance. But nobody seems to go after the insurance industry. Nobody goes after the oil industry. everything gets dumped, you know, to the, you know, the employees here in the state. And eventually, my concern is you can only dump so much on the people. Everybody's gonna be making minimum wage because they have to pay that much more for insurance and everything else. And it seems like nobody goes after insurance for the oil industry, so.
And you just told me why we shouldn't do increased fees and taxes though, right?
Well,
That's dumped back on the workers.
Well, that's true, but I'm just saying that a lot of other, I think, in this whole country, a lot of the big problems are with the oil industry, the speculators, you name it, and just like insurance and the, you know, the healthcare industry. You know, there has to be some changes made there, but I think state government goes after who they can, you know, basically control.
And I think that a big share of going after the insurance companies, the hard cap was one way I felt that we were going after insurance companies because, and I did get feedback from government agencies saying that, yeah, our insurance company kept their increase to where it was under the hard cap. And so idea being that a lot of insurance companies will say, hey, if we want to do business with this group, we've got to keep that cost, a reasonable program out there under the hard cap. Now, what the Affordable Care Act is going to do to that's totally different. We, you know, because that's all the insurance companies are saying, hey, with all the stuff coming up with this, we're, you know, it's hard for us to negate what's going on in the federal government from state, although we do want to keep working on that to see what we can do. It's a big concern. So I have been one who has stood up against the insurance companies when they wanted to change our no fault, but and we do need some changes to no fault, but we need to do it in a situation where it is helpful for the people, not just for the insurance companies. So we'll continue to see proposals come forward on changing no fault. But to me, it's got to be something that's worthwhile for the people, not for the insurance companies. The same thing with Blue Cross Blue Shield. They are working on a plan to restructure, and in my opinion, we're taking what has been a nonprofit organization that people have the interest in because of the fact that it is a statewide charitable nonprofit. They want to change it to a nonprofit mutual, but in doing that, I think that the people that are making the deals haven't required enough of them, and so I voted no on that as well. So I'm standing up to them, but we need more of us that need to do it. Oil companies, I'll tell you, if you do some research, I think you'll find that a lot of them are paying a lot more taxes than what you think. And you know, I think that we do a good job of controlling the way that they can drill and so forth here in Michigan. But I do think that as we see more activity, we'll see more benefit from that as well. And again, I do think that we need to spend a lot more money on roads than what we are. But, you know, it's just like, and I mentioned to somebody here this morning, it's like at home, we can't always bring in more money, but sometimes we have to change how we're spending the money that's coming in, and that's where I think we need to prioritize the roads, because as you say, if we wait, it's gonna get worse.
Right.
So,
Pay now or pay more later, basically, so.
it's true, it's very true. Yeah.
Joel, I think Michigan is one of the states with the most or the highest incarceration rate in terms of the number of people we do put in prisons. And of course, as you mentioned, it's a cost of about $44,000 per prisoner. I think that probably, well, two things. One, that we need to revisit why we're putting all these people in prisons as opposed to maybe some other way of trying to change their habits or their antisocial behavior, and bring that back into line where we're not at the top of the list. The second thing is that as you take the incident down in Alabama with the guy that took the young kid into this bunker, he was exhibiting mental illness behaviors long before this event ever occurred. And it appears that one of the areas that we need to put a little more, not only money into, but strengthen the ability of law enforcement, social agencies to deal with the mentally ill needs to be addressed. And of course, under Engler, we turned a lot of those people back out onto society, and obviously in some ways that cut the amount that the state was spending on mental health. But it appears that we probably should look at that and not only maybe spend a little bit more money, but also toughen up some of the laws that both law enforcement agencies and social welfare agencies can use to take and deal with these people.
It's a very good point, Tom. There were concerns about the way people were being treated in some of these facilities in the past, in addition to the money that was being spent. But I've recently been brought some information that I think we're going to be able to do something with, and part of that is to try and make sure that our mentally ill are addressed properly when they are arrested. Basically it says under a certain IQ that these people need to have somebody with them before they're questioned. Because many of these people will agree to whatever they're pressured to agree just to make people happy. And so then they end up in prison with people who are at normal intelligence levels, and they take advantage of them. And so it continues on. So there needs to be a situation where we have a way to take care of these people somewhere, and we do have to revisit the idea of maybe facilities for the mentally ill again, and so that we can take care of them somewhere where they're actually being treated and helped, rather than in a situation where they're totally being taken advantage of in a prison system. So we are working on that, and it's going to take a lot, but we do have to address it. Yes.
In the prison system, though, is there some way that we could force the state to put upon these prisoners when they go in, that you either go into an education system and you will pass, or you go into a labor system? You don't get housed for the, can I watch Oprah today?
We definitely need to do a lot with that, and that's part of the reason that we have as many people in there as we do, is that there are certain requirements for education that they have to have before they get out, but those are only administered in certain areas at certain times. So, they might stay in 2 years longer than they wanted to because they can't get in, or not wanted to, but then they would have been required to because they can't get into the program that they need. And that's something that we have to prioritize with as well, and look at it and say, hey, what's the chances that this person is really going to change?
That's the problem. A lot of these aren't.
And who is? Let's prioritize. So, yeah.
Joel, you've got to do that type of situation, we're talking about education or work thing, that stuff is not even done. They don't even look at that. I would suggest revisiting the program itself, and then if they don't have to stay there, you start right from the get-go, they go to that program and not wait to get into it. Or do it now and not down the road.
It's amazing, some of these people, as far as how they take hold, if they have an opportunity to have an education in the prison, they do pick up on it. One of the things that is being worked on, and I had mixed feelings on some of these, but they are doing drug courts and some of those sorts of things, so that these people are being treated different. They're having to come in and report. Brian Callie was telling us a story a few days ago about an individual who had multiple incidents. He kept trying to change but couldn't, and then finally they were having a program, and he was being acknowledged for coming around and being straight and sober for a matter of years. And Brian says, well, you know, what was it that was a turning point for you? And he said, well, he says, in the drug court, he said, I had to report to the judge every week. And Brian said, oh, that must have been pretty scary to have to talk to that judge every week. He said, no. He said, it's the first time anybody cared what I was doing. And he said, you know, and so I met with him every week. He said, that's what I need, you know. So and a lot of times we don't realize what these people are coming from. And so, back in the day.
I work with before I retired. Are you guys still, before I worked, they were trying to privatize our stores to save money? Is that still an option, or?
There it is.
They were gonna privatize the stores, they were working on health care.
They're working on several issues again. And
Centralize all the warehouses like the Williams. They're gonna have one central warehouse instead of,
yeah, I
instead of
don't,
having all the free, you know, like all the food that comes in, being housed at each individual prison.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know if it's being done with that. I know that they do have central purchasing now.
Right.
And in talking to some of the people in the prisons, they don't feel that that's being done as effectively as it could be. And the privatization, there was a bill passed last year that would allow for privatization, or there already has been privatization of the facility over in Baldwin.
Right.
But it was for youth, and now it's been opened up that they can bid on housing adults there. While I think that our state employees do a good job and need to be backed up on this, I do think that if we can have one or two private companies able to compete in a few areas, it may be of benefit. So we have to keep our options open on that. But I still don't feel like our biggest problem is with our corrections officers. They're not, we don't have too many of those, and I think what they're getting paid is probably not out of line for what they're doing. So, however, I think we have a lot of people up the ladder that I think is overkill. Yes?
We're here in tax season, so to speak, and everyone's getting taxes together and everything. And I keep my ear to the ground and listen to both residents of Gladwin County and then small businesses in Gladwin County. And what's come up a bit, and I hadn't really thought of it much, the earned income credit here for the state of Michigan being lowered, I was told 70%.
Yes.
And it's already a portion of the federal income tax credit. It's what, it used to be 20, now it's down to 6, I believe. And so it's had some ramifications as people are doing their taxes. So just to let you know, I've been hearing that from some folks, and they're not, of course, real happy about that, you know, for low-income people and losing some, perhaps $300. But then I also worry about the small businesses where that money would have been spent here, which may total, and I don't know if this is correct, but may total in your district for $2 million.
Possible.
Yes, it's possible,
It's-
but just to let you know, I'm kind of hearing the both
Yes.
sides here.
And I hear both sides as well.
Yeah.
And part of the issue with that is not only is it a credit, an income tax credit, it's a refundable credit. So even if you weren't paying any taxes, which most of these people in this range, a lot of them were not, so even though you weren't paying any taxes, you were getting money back from the tax system. And so, you know, we're trying to make it fairer for everyone. I know it's difficult for them, but yet to take away your tax money and say, well, you have to pay more, Tom, because this guy wants that. That, you know, that's what we're trying to get away from.
Right, and just had concerns about small businesses then, because that would be revenue for them, so just expressing a concern.
And at the same time, we also did do some work to make sure that there's heating dollars available for the less fortunate. Yes?
What was reflecting
Oh, I'm sorry. His question was about the earned income tax credit. And it's been reduced from about 20% to 6% of the federal income tax credit. And the thing about that is that it is a refundable credit. So people actually were getting checks in the mail that had not paid income taxes. And so while the people who are not going to get it are going to miss it, the people who are not paying the taxes are going to appreciate not having to pay the taxes on it as well. So that's where we're trying. Tom?
Well, I just read a short article in the Wall Street Journal that they did a study out in the East, and a family that was receiving food stamps and other benefits, in order for them to wind up getting a job that would equal the benefits that they were receiving, they would have, in this case, I think they were receiving about $15,000 in benefits. They'd have to get a $35,000 job to wind up equalizing where there was basically a zero gain. And it appears that one of the things that has to happen is that we have to wean, once people get on that system, we have to wean them off it in order to get them to go out and find a job that is going to provide all those benefits that they're receiving.
Yeah, and that's important. And it's you want to help the people that really need the help, but you need to make sure that the people who could go to work are incentivized to do that. And that's where Michigan Works comes in and helps a lot with that. There are requirements for these people, and they require them to do training and that sort of thing. But we need to address that even further. I had the experience myself. I've had others talk about where they've had people come in and say, hey, I want to apply for a job, and when you look and they're dressed in pajamas and all this stuff, and you say, okay, and so you give them an application, and then they say, hey, will you sign this form that I was in here looking for a job? And we need to make sure that it's easier for them to go to work than it is for them to not go to work, and that's a difficult thing. And the more we try and clamp down on it, the more the federal government says, oh no, you can't do that. And so we've got to really try to move forward with that. But Michigan Works has done a really good job in training a lot of folks, and they not only do they train and help people get jobs who totally need a lot of training, they also help people who, to no fault of their own, are looking for work because a company shut down or whatever. So they're doing a good job with that, but we need to expand on it.
Couple of questions, Joel. One is in reference to the Agenda 21 with Greg McMasters. Could you give us a little bit of insight on how that legislation is moving along? And number two is, are you on the Judiciary Committee now?
I am on the Judiciary.
And then I have a follow-up question.
Okay, all right. But yeah, the Agenda 21 is a program that the United Nations adopted quite a few years ago that basically says that we need to totally protect our natural resources. And the concern of a lot of folks is that it actually puts nature and animals above people. And so it's you have to look at that. There are a lot of things, but we want to make sure that it doesn't put those things above people. We also at the same time want to make sure that we're not developing good farm ground into high rises and that sort of thing if we can avoid it. And Rep. McMaster's bill, I'm not sure which committee that will go to, but it pushes away that Agenda 21. One of the things that really makes you wonder if there is some thought about that is when you see the DNR, especially in the past, we are really starting to see them come our way for this now, but they were taking away a lot of access for state property. And but we are we have a new director, and he is working well with us. They have to give us a land plan in the next few months that tells us, okay, this is why we want this land, this is what we're gonna do with it, and so forth. So, so that's a step in the right direction. At this point, what we have to do is we have to get leadership to get behind McMaster's bill before it's gonna go anywhere, and that's iffy at this point.
The follow-up was, in the judiciary, if you're on the judiciary committee now, is to look at the judges' funds, the fines, fees, and stipends numbers that the court system takes out. 2 years ago, the court system through the 84 counties in the state of Michigan took in over $200 million that goes right directly and is directly proportioned out from the Supreme Court. And it goes into a lot of other funds based on that legislation. And these judges, and that's all fines and fees that people pay for a speeding ticket, or if they go to the courthouse and pay the clerk for a particular type of judicial action that they want to have taken either in district or the circuit court. And the counties are only getting a very small portion of that, and it's all going back to the state. That needs to be looked into. That's a lot of money, a lot of money.
We'll have to look into that, because I know you brought it up before, but I'm not familiar with exactly how it's working, so I've got to get deeper into that. Dan?
Yeah, Joel, the gas tax situation, what's the range that they're looking for to increase it?
You know, I think he was talking about 8 cents, something like that on gas, and then 120 on registrations.
From what it is right now?
And increase.
Increase it that much?
Yeah.
Any stipulations, how much would go back to the counties and the cities?
I haven't heard that yet. I think most of it would go to the state level.
Why couldn't we entertain the thought of thinking outside the box and send it back to the counties and cities where they know where it should go? Just like the money for the court situation. So we're doing a lot of stuff for the state, but it's not coming back to where it really needs to go.
Yeah.
And you talk about the taxes for the state land. That tax, you didn't address that, where that tax money was gonna go. If Oklahoma County has 80% state land, that money should go back to Oklahoma County, the same as Gladwin County. The state doesn't really need, if they want to get a 0.5%, that would be fine. The counties need the money.
This is paid by the state to the locals. That is payment of taxes.
You didn't say that.
No, okay.
Yeah.
But it's only based on revenue that the land has brought in.
Well, the
Otherwise,
fund,
we defeat the purpose.
the money in that fund is from that revenue.
Generated by either forestry or oil and gas. I would
Right.
assume.
Right, it is, and there's plenty there to take care of the taxes, but they've chosen not to always do that. And even after the law was put in place, it still takes an appropriation every year to make sure it's done. So some of these changes that we're doing additionally here will help to make sure that it's actually done. So it will cut the amount of money that they have to spend on purchasing more land, and it'll make them take care of the land that they do have. And that's the intent of that, by paying the locals for that, their taxes. Yes?